Hello, welcome to my channel. Today is Monday, and I have to get my page back. Okay, it's day number 9, and it's May 12th, 2025. And I'm going to start by telling you what happened this morning. When I started the meditation, I had intended on doing a dream called the 1920s dress. And in the middle of the meditation, I changed it, and I decided that I was going to read. I was going to do one on called a chat with the Pope. And the reason that I decided to do that was because I really felt that with all the things that are going on and the changes that are happening in the world, that this was significant. And I could not shake that notion at all. And Metatron was like, well, you have to go in order with your journal. And I was like, no, I'm not going to go in order with the journal. I'm going to do it this way. And hemming and hawing a little bit. And then finally, that is what happened. I ended up changing it. So this is what happened. And it actually turned out to be pretty nice. And I think that I don't want to say that Metatron was wrong, because I don't think he's ever wrong. But I think that what happened was my determination to do this was so big and so intense that I think chances are he probably thought, oh, well, I guess I might as well let her do it, and because, she's going to do it anyway. So I don't know. This was the first time that there was actually, I don't want to say a disagreement between me and Metatron, but I do want to say that that I decided to do it this way because I really felt drawn to it, and I think that I think my guides had something to do with it, and I think we were kind of ganging up on Metatron a little bit. So I will do that. So I'm going to go ahead and give these cards a little bit of a shuffle. I'm going to see what comes up and what the card tells me, and maybe it'll tell me what Metatron was saying, or maybe it'll tell me what my guides are saying. I don't know. But at any rate, all the dreams will get done. It's just a matter of what order to do them. And so this is why I just felt so compelled to do this, because of the direction that the conversation was going in. And so I'm going to pull the card. And the card is Liberty. It's a beautiful card, but it's called Liberty. And it really does coincide with the meditation today. It's about the freedom, the liberty to do the things that you want to do, to make the choices you want to make. And I think it's kind of interesting that that through that I actually had my own little sense of liberty going on, even though it was not in order of what I had anticipated. But this is the card, and I'm going to go ahead and read the meditation. So today is day number 9. It's May 12th, 2025, and the dream is called A Chat with the Pope. I said today's dream is also dated of February 11th, 2024, which may have been more accurate than the last one. I'm not sure, but at any rate, the journal has this particular dream, and although I feel drawn to a different dream, I will go in order. So I said. Metatron says, you will have time to discuss all of your dreams in due course. Some may be longer and some may be shorter, depending on how much or how little messaging may be in them. I said, do all dreams have a spiritual message? I asked. I get the impression that some of them feel too convoluted to have an underlying message. Metatron says, in most instances, there is a meaning to your dreams, but the concept to it may be just a few words, an affirmation, or an idea. Some people do attribute lessons to their dreams, but some dreams are so ambiguous that the meaning is hidden by symbols and concepts. Oftentimes, the dreams are not just as cut and dried as you perceive, and once we discuss the concepts of the dreams, the content of the dream, you will find that there are some messages construed in various different stories. It's like that humble king and the notions that you have with regards to the new pope. We do not have to keep saying that you are not Catholic. You have several Catholic friends, and you understand the necessity of a church as vast as this one, having a leader who is encased in area of mysticism. What did you learn while you were researching the Benedictine convents and monasteries? I said that I learned that there was a good deal of mysticism to them. Okay, I'm going to go off the ranks, and discuss the dream I had with the Pope. I can do that 1920s dress tomorrow. And Metatron says, "You're the boss." And I said, "It seems rather applicable to what we are now discussing. I had a dream about the Pope on the 4th of April, 2024. It seems a bit strange because I know that it was probably about Pope Francis and not Pope Leo. The thing is, I always liked Pope Francis. He came off as a very kind and compassionate man. When he transitioned, I thought about how much hope he had has been invested in the new pope, and this dream seems to sort of timely in this particular instance, um, and it seems to also parallel to what will happen and as the church and where the church is heading. I get the feeling that this dream really coincides with the state of the world today, and since you asked me about my research, I just felt it was more applicable." And Ramon says, "You are so logical, so tell us about the dream." I said, "Okay, in the dream, I was attending a choir concert and I ended up sitting on a balcony next to the Pope. He was a nice man with a gentle voice. He looked at me and smiled, and I asked him where he was from, which he said, Finland. This made no sense to me, as Pope Francis is from Argentina and Pope Leo is from Chicago. But that was what was said, and I took it all at face value. He then asked me if I thought he was similar to Pope Benedict, which he also said he was older. I snickered and I said, wiser or more wise, I said, was more applicable, which caused him to chuckle. And I don't remember anything else, but I'm guessing that there's probably nothing at all that spiritual about this. And Metatron says, "The fact that you discussed or mentioned Benedict is quite relevant." I said, "It is? Why?" And Metatron says, "The mention of someone who sociologically has some shortcoming is very relevant. You see, the Pope is a human being, perhaps a significant figure in your own development or through the words of the media that portrays him as an important religious figure. The Pope is, in fact, a figurehead, like a king or a queen. The realization that this man has been placed on the throne and his humility shows when he smiles at a woman at a choir concert is relevant to the idea that he is humble in the eyes of those who practice this faith. By seeing him as another person is an attempt to understand that although you may not practice that faith, you do strive to understand the significance of it. What was said in a movie that you watched some time ago? A king is a symbol of what is good about the society. Well, the Pope is the same. He is an example of the ideological backbone of the people who practice this faith. I said, who was my dream about the real life Pope, or was it the symbolism and an idea of the church leadership and their role in society, or just a concept or image of what my perception of it is? Metatron says, "What does it matter? The idea is that you spoke to someone who was far removed from you or your ideals. The fact that you mentioned Benedict was quite telling. It was a sort of question about the denial of those contained in the church. You asked that question because you had heard that Benedict was not very good at acknowledging the issue of abuse within the ranks of the priests in the church. This has been an issue that has stayed with you for quite some time. So the question, although answered another way, more ambiguous way, you still were seeing a historical disregard for the question in general." I said, "Will the new Pope address this elephant in the room?" And Metatron says, he very well could, but it is going to be an issue that will have to take a little bit of time. He currently has a great deal to contend with. Right now, the issue that he is contending with will be demanding his full attention. But this man will, if his free will is energetically willing, is going to set a route to making some necessary changes. That will help all people, not just church members. Sometimes we don't always get the instant results that we seek, but we do see things change in a gradual level. I said, "Will some of the changes be bring bigger changes? I mean, right in America, Catholics are being presented with a choice: follow the real leader or continue tagging behind a false prophet. Metatron says that is a very astute question. It is safe to say that a good deal of these changes will have an impact on where they politically support. Remember, one of Jesus' quotation was about beware of the false prophet appearing real. The fact that this lesson is being presented is going to shake some of these people to their core. I said, some, not all. Metatron says, well, keep in mind that a good deal of professed Christians do not view the Catholic Church in a positive light. They are still stuck in that ideology of following and revering a false prophet. The fact that they would be willing to deport Jesus should tell you how far down the rabbit hole they have fallen. I said, it sounds scary. Sunshine says, people have done this for centuries, of people who have believed in the ideals of these people who could solve their problems. The trouble is they cannot. They merely are about control, about pushing people to the idea that they are beneath them. Your dream was a way for the universe to say, all human beings are equal in the eyes of God. Be careful who you hitch your wagon onto. Things may have they may have good ideas, and their intentions may seem noble. At their core, there is a sense of evil that is in the world, a sense that if they can get something out of a person, they will. The true and noble leader will not do that. This is a main idea. To see that spiritually you might be further along than others, that does not make you better, but instead merely suggests that you are more experienced than they are. That is where the significance lies. And at that moment, Fred Rogers comes in and says, being a learned individual is a grand thing, Yvette, and meeting someone who is spiritually advanced is special, but do not allow yourself to compare yourself to another person. That was why you were seated next to him in the dream. If you had been anywhere else, then that level of equality would have been lost. Perhaps in your analogy about the humble king is the realization that the person is that person is the one who can measure himself with you and say, we are equal. Not the same, but equal in the sense of creating an understanding that you are not beneath another person. That is what humanity has lost. And I said, when you transitioned, we lost that sense in spades. I miss the day when the idea of kindness was an asset and not a liability. Metatron says that is what the new Pope is going to show the world. It did not die when Fred Rogers transitioned. It was just waiting for this shining example to burst forth. I said, I hope it does soon. And my Metatron says, it will, but the universe works in its own time. Don't forget, you can be an example of that goodness as well. And I said, I won't. Thank you. And that was where we ended. So, yeah, I was surprised when Fred Rogers came in, but he seemed to be the most perfect person to come in at this moment and remind me that that dream where I'm seated next to the Pope and not in front of him, or where he's higher up than me or what have you, but we're like on the same level, we're on the same plane, we're in the same place. And that kind of made me feel that maybe, this idea of putting people on pedestals is really not that grand. And even in the movie White Christmas, they mention this, where he says, putting somebody up on one of those steel white chargers is really kind of dangerous because they could fall off. And that was a very profound line, and that was a very profound thing. And although she said that her charger was, her knight was up there to stay, he ultimately did, by a misunderstanding, he ultimately did fall off that charger. He ultimately fell, not by his own mistakes, but by his being a human being and somebody misunderstanding his intentions and his ideas. And it can happen. And so be careful who you revere. Be careful who you put up on that pedestal, because as human beings, we are all capable of falling off that pedestal. And when I had that dream where I sat next to the Pope, I thought, wow, this is kind of amazing that I am not sitting beneath him. I am not sitting in front of him and at a lower level, but I am at the same level on the same balcony and looking at the same concert that he was seeing. So, keeping that in mind, I think that's a very significant idea. And when you have that idea, you have liberty, you have the freedom, and you have the understanding that other people do not choose for you, you choose for yourself. So, with that said, I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care, and as always, namaste.